You know, when you start gardening and you start with some small projects in the garden, it has a tendency, a life of its own, and it just keeps growing into bigger and bigger projects. Well, that's the case for me.
I started small, as I usually do. I was weeding for my compost and building dead hedges with leftover twigs and sticks. But then I got closer and closer to something I didn't want to look at in the garden. A great pit. A deep scar in the land where no sun would shine and, of course, no plants could grow. It was the remains of a stranded excavator project someone started here many years ago, and it was never finished. Of course, I don't have an excavator, so it all seemed to be like a challenge way out of my league. But the land was screaming to be healed, and I had started it.
I don't have an excavator, but I do have a shovel.
And so the work and digging could begin. I was digging for days, but luckily we had such wonderful weather. I could take a break now and then to go down to the ocean and look at the beautiful lights that we have here in autumn. As if moving all the soil back into the pit wasn't a big enough project on itself. When I was working on it, I got ideas and inspiration to make it better than it had ever been before, make it more harmonious and beautiful. To do this, I needed to see more of the natural lines in the landscape, and that meant weeding even larger areas. I made a note about where the sun would shine and where the wind would blow. I needed to level out the terrain by moving more soil from the southeast to the northwest. While I was digging up what turned out to be almost half the garden by now, I found these big flat rocks in the soil. I decided to use them for pathways in the garden. Making wild rocks fit nicely and steadily together is not easy. It's like a jigsaw puzzle where you always miss just that right one piece. When working close to the small house, or cabin as we call it, I adjusted topsoil and needed a level to make sure the ground became nice and flat. Luckily for me, my father had one in his toolbox and I could borrow it. The leaves were turning red and falling from the trees. And that needed to be dealt with too. I still had a bit more digging to do before winter is setting in and the ground will be frozen.